Can we have the first question then, please? Right.
It doesn't matter.
I like to come back as a tree.
Does it?
Well, I would, you know.
Yep. Yes.
Have you all ever considered doing a rhythm based solo album? Why not?
We can't play it.
Not good enough.
We can't play it.
And we don't really want to, we want to play our stuff.
Yes.
Am I on?
Yes, go.
You're on the air, lady.
No, I hear you're so alone. If the others, the president, the others are also on Will you make films alone individually? Will each of you make films alone individually, like John has just been offered a part alone in a film for the first time?
Yeah, that's it. You just repeat it.
Yeah, but it's still not going to help actually because we've still got too much noise in the room actually. I mean, the question is that John is making a solo film. Will each of the other Beatles follow suit and make solo films, right?
It depends if anybody asks us to do something and if we think it's worth doing and if we'd like to do it. There's a possibility.
Next question, please.
You get
Yes?
a few offers from Walt Disney now.
In business with your remarks, you came to a reception on the subject so much. Do you figure big tempest over nothing or a lot of foolishness?
Well, it's not over nothing now because it is something. But there weren't as many people upset as I was led to believe. I'm not so seriously upset.
You figure that this is one of the reasons you haven't been drawing as well on this trip?
Nothing to do with it.
Pardon?
I don't think it's anything to do with it. I don't think we're drawing any less than we expected, whether this had started or not.
Yes.
Not really.
Gentlemen, care to comment on the fact that the Ku Klux Klan is going to picket you tonight because...
Well, there's nothing to say about them.
John, are you writing a book of children's stories?
I've thought about it, but they don't always turn out like children's stories, you see. So when I've got enough that are like children's stories, I'll stick them together. And the other ones won't be for children.
Are they the same style?
I suppose so. I can't do it any other way so far.
Yes.
Mr. Lennon, have you met James Joyce?
Yes, since...
Mr. Lennon, what do you think of the remark that people have been saying that you made the remark about Jesus to get publicity for your night?
Well, that is one of the most stupid versions of it. Because that's not a publicity stunt at all. Yeah. Don't need that publicity. Not like that.
Can I add to that that article was originally published in England last March, so it has nothing to do with the pre-tour. Yes.
I would like to ask Mr. McCartney, I understand that they have set aside some time during this American tour for a vacation. What are your plans for that?
I didn't know we had actually, but
We've got 4 days off.
well, just sit around and swim and sit around.
What would be your favorite part of the country in which to take off?
Well, I think we'll be in Los Angeles for it, and that's nice and sunny.
Gentlemen, what's the idea of the Yellow Submarine come from?
What do you say?
Really is.
I don't know, I was going to sleep one night and I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a children's song like the children's songs you used to have, which
In
you
the
don't
old
get.
days.
Like sort And of it was barking. nice.
That is John in the background. Is that you?
Barking, that's
John
me, yes.
barking, yeah. Cheers.
Thank you.
Yes.
What do you think of Prime Minister Wilson's stabilization policy?
That's what policy?
Don't think much of it, but good luck to him if he can do it.
What policy?
I would like to ask
Stabilization for the pound policy.
Mr. Harrison, we have seen some trends in your music, especially since the sitar, to get away from the usual sounds in beat music. Do you see a trend in the whole field of beat music, and if so, which way is this trend going?
Well, I don't know. It depends on the people making the music. I can only talk for myself. and myself is very interested in Indian music, and I'd like to continue learning it and using it in our music.
Well, I've tried singing some of my stories, but it doesn't work. I've thought of it, you know, it might work one day, but I tried it, you know, somebody said that, so I went home and sang a bit of the book, and it's soft.
Yeah.
The Time magazine read some sinister meaning into the song Norwegian Wood. If you could tell me what you had in mind when you wrote it.
Exactly what it says in the lyrics, which is nothing.
Yes.
Gentlemen, if you could consider going to entertain American troops in Vietnam.
I wouldn't like to go near Vietnam, actually.
Do you think you're largely responsible for language being labeled?
It's nothing to do with us.
Very bad.
John, on August the 23rd, this is your 70th anniversary.
Is it? Thanks.
You're also appearing at Shea Stadium that evening. How do you feel about appearing with your wife?
Well, I mean, anniversary is just another day, really, you know.
Yes.
I'd like to put the same question to President George. How do you feel about being away from Rowdy for so long?
Oh, you know, you just get used to it, don't you?
Sure. Kid out.
If I'd like to ask Paul if you were surprised when the album covers were today and yesterday was drawn in America.
No, I don't know. You know, we just did that photograph because we had a photographic session and the photographer said, put this meat on you. And we just sat there and he photographed us and they said, well, that'll do for the American album cover. So we didn't complain, you know, and then everyone else complained, so we said, terrible idea.
We didn't like it enough to support it.
If it had been a better photograph of the same subject, we might have stuck up for it. But it was a lousy photograph anyway, really, and the photographer knows it too, so he won't be hurt, you know.
But it wasn't your idea.
No,
No,
it wasn't a very good one.
We just go along with things though.
A bit unsubtle.
How's you two with a minor automobile accident?
Fine, thanks. How's yours? All right.
I just, the Associated Press yesterday ran a story from the Vatican saying that the official Vatican newspaper defended your statement. Have you seen it?
I've seen a similar version to what you're talking about in a paper. Well, if it makes other people feel better, it'll make me feel better.
Good, thank you.
Double think.
To anyone, are you going to do a tour of England this year?
Probably, yes. I'm sorry, Ringo, you're going to speak.
No, I nearly spoke.
Why do you call you
I'll just take the photos.
Because it revolves.
We all hope you'll be around for a while, but what happens when the Beatles are no longer the Beatles, John?
We'll just be four people. A bit strange, but you know.
Any plans to work or just retire?
Well, this is work, isn't it?
I mean, after this is over.
Yeah, we'll
Well,
do something.
you
We'll
know,
work together musically, at least, probably, for quite a bit.
got to do something.
I'd like to direct a question here to John and Paul. Have you ever thought of writing for a musical, Broadway musical?
We thought about it.
And if you did, what type of subject?
All Broadway musicals are the same, especially the baritones.
Forward, John. Now, come on, George, come on.
Well, I wouldn't allow them to write a Broadway musical.
No, I don't think, we've thought about it, we've never got down to it.
The only thing is, if we did,
No, we probably would never get that. I don't know, I don't fancy it anyway.
no, if we did one, we'd try and. The only thing is, it's difficult trying to think of something that isn't 50 years out of date, like most of the others.
What kind of subject?
Fun?
Go on.
Sorry? Well, you know, a song like Hello Dolly could have been, even though it was good, nothing against it. It could have been a hit 50 years ago. You know, it was in the 50 years ago style. And it's 50? Yeah, I think so. And it's a bit silly making musicals of that era now. It should be up to date.
Gentlemen,
By now.
what have you found to be the biggest drawback in being the Beatles? Hacking or the...
Interpretations of what you say. Really.
What makes you say that?
I don't know, it just came into my head.
Yes.
People lost weight and they've already been sick in the last week.
I'm fine. No, I'm, same old 2 stone 5. No, I'm just fine. I'm just resting.
In the song Eleanor Rigby, there's a verse that speaks about priest Father Mackenzie. I would like to ask Paul and John together, they wrote the song. It says Father Mackenzie is writing a sermon that no one will hear. Does this have any meaning? Does it mean that God is dead? What did you have in mind when you wrote it?
It just means what it says, it's a story. When somebody else makes up a story, nobody goes into it and says, he's against everything in the world. If you make up a story, it's just a story. But when you write a song, it seems to take on a different meaning. Anyway, that was just a story, that's all. And it means he's not a very successful vicar, Yes.
John, what do you think about Dylan?
I think he's good.
You said that after the downfall, you'll just be 4 different people. Do you consider yourself now individual people or just 4 people?
They always have,
We've never believed the myth of the Beatles as being like 4 little puppets. Now, we don't believe that. We'll just be the same people as we've always been. That's all.
I have read conflicting reports about your next movie, and you might have answered it earlier, but I didn't get too well at first. Do you still want to do a Western?
No, that's out. It's been out a long time. No, I mean, that's nothing to do with it. It was just this, we just suddenly decided it was the wrong way, going the wrong way in films, doing a big Western. No. Same category, really. Possibly.
An epic. Yes. The Bible.
A number of our readers would like to know that of all the people you have met over the years, royalty, other singers, other singing groups, fans, or just men in the street, whom would you like as a group best?
Who would you like in the war?
Oh, it's a hard one, isn't it? We've met a lot of people,
Reporters.
Many prominent church leaders say the church is an institution, an organization is going to die or completely change. Is this the type of thing you had in mind, or do you think this is going to happen?
I think it ought to happen, or it should happen, or it will change the wrong way for them.
What?
Well,
It should happen.
It should happen, it should change,
But it changes.
And it's good that they've noticed.
I'd like to take the last 3 questions. First one.
In England, is there much of a camaraderie between you and the other popular singers? And do you ever get together with other groups and discuss music?
Yes, there's quite a lot. There's no reason for us to hate other groups or be jealous of other groups. In the same way, from their side of it, so we all get on very well. No one's jealous. We all sell records. Yeah, we talk about it.
Will you incorporate more and more ethnic sounds into your music, such as Israeli, Russian, and Greek artists?
Well, we're not running around looking for sort of little ethnic things from different countries to bring into the music. We just happened across Indian music accidentally, as it were, and that we took an interest in it. It's possible, but we haven't thought of that.
Yes.
Recently, have you seriously considered breaking up?
That's what you mean by breaking up. We haven't actually thought, the time has come for us to break up, but we've realised the possibility of, our breaking up as an actual sort of natural progression. Because we can't go on forever like this, so we've got to think now and prepare for, if it did happen, which it should, it's got to sometime.
Realistically, then you are considering an natural progression.
Yeah, how long it'll take,
we
nobody
can't
knows.
consider it any other way because it's not going to go any other way. It's going to progress and just end up as something. And we think about it now so that we're not at a loss when it does happen.
John, how did you begin filming the picture?
Pardon?
When did you begin filming the picture you're going to
4 days after I get home from this tour. I don't know.
September the
5th.
September the 5th.
Gentlemen, other than John Lennon, do you think Mr. Lennon's religious comment had anything to do with your audience attendance?
No.
No. I I mean, you know, it doesn't matter what he thinks about religion or what any of us thinks, really, to us. It happens to matter to other people, you know, and we've learnt that bit.
The audiences are not little, you know. I don't know what papers you're reading, but, you know, ask the promoters what tickets are selling. The audiences are big and fine enough for us.
This must be the last question, please.
Question for Ringo. After naming your first son Zach, what name would you like to come up for a second son?
Well, I don't know.
Vim.
I don't know, you know, I haven't thought of it. Maybe a girl.
Zacharine.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Is that the end?
John's Uncle Charlie Lennon is a caring, compassionate friend of Beatle fans everywhere, always ready to sit down with Beatle people and talk about the good old days with his brother Fred and young John. He is that rarest of all creatures in the phenomenal world of Beatledom, a genuine eyewitness to the formation of a legend. Here he sings an original ballad beckoning back to the first bygone days of Beatlemania in Liverpool.
Where are the ships of the Mersey that sailed away from the shores? They have been and gone and left us, never to return no more. Oh, come back to the Mersey, to the sounds of twist and shout. We'll keep a welcome here on Merseyside, of that there is no doubt. The live bird is silent, it's got nothing to shout about. It's seen as ships come in each day, and it's seen them all go out. But now those days are over, they were the scenes of the past. Now all the live bird hears these days is the chimes of the live clock.
As the Beatles will certainly tell you, Liverpool has its share of characters, and Auntie Nellie is certainly one of those. The kids called her Auntie Nellie with the wooden belly in Ringo's old neighborhood of the Dingle back in Liverpool. But I spoke to her in Toronto about living next door to the Starkeys for many, many years. I was surprised at some of the funny things she had to say, as I think you'll be. So here she is, Auntie Nellie with the wooden belly.
Richie, they called him Richie, and Richard. He never got Dickie. He never got Ringo or Dickie. Ringo only came up. But he was always musically inclined. I remember his dad buying him his first drums, you know. And they were getting a bit on their feet then, low down, you know. Well, we all were, you know. None of us had much. He wasn't a well child. And he was protected. They took good care of him, like they were good parents. He was a good kid, yes, rough, and as I say, they were all rough diamonds, rough and tumble. He was the average Liverpool Scouser. He was the average Scouser.
Right.
I don't think Ringo will ever really forget from whence he came. He will always be there with the boy. I mean, he had sad memories, he had good memories, and I don't think he'll ever change. It might have only been a gig, as Dorothy calls it. It wasn't a big concert. My husband used to like going because it was Dickie's son. Go and see Dickie's son playing. Could have been there. It was only a small place.
Did they have jackets? Or?
They had leather jackets, and they had their wigs on at the time, so it's that far back.
They didn't have wigs, but
they had long hair, because I met one of them. I think it was George Harrison coming down church. She's outside. And it was somebody in the crowd said, "That's George Harrison," you know, and I thought, well, I don't know the man.
Father Tom Mackenzie, an early Beatles compere in Liverpool, recalls the unqualified madness that was Beatlemania.
I'll go back into 62. When the boys started doing the first numbers, and they hadn't done Love Me Do or Please Please Me then. They were doing the My Bonnie, Twist and Shout. the girls found out that Ringo, they found out he liked jelly babies, these sweets. And they used to bring these sweets and throw them on the stage in the bags for Ringo. In these shows that they were throwing the jelly babies, when we pulled the curtains and they went off stage, John used to come on stage and he'd say, "Give me a hand with these." Now, there was only one young lady we let on stage, and she was a polio case in a wheelchair. And due to being in the hall, she couldn't see at the back. We used to bring her through the back entrance, put her on the stage, and John and I used to throw her and put all these jelly babies in her lap, you know. And he used to think the world of them. I had to get to the hall to do the dance. And I got in the hall about 7:30, soaking wet, and ready to go on stage. The hall was packed out. Every ticket had been sold, and there was thousands standing outside in the rain, just in the shelter of the hall, listening to the lads playing and the girls screaming. Because hysteria used to break out in those days. The girls, when they started doing "Please, Please Me" from Me to You, the hysteria of the girls shouting, "I love George, I love John," and they'd throw notes on the stage. These are the things I used to collect. There was a relative of Ringo's lived in Northwich, and they'd gone there for the dinner, so they wanted something to eat, and they couldn't go into the canteen, into the cafeteria, counter the kids, you know, mobbing them, see. So they went to this relative's. So I used to go into the dressing room, make sure everything was okay and that. And I went into the dressing room. There was 2 big dressing rooms, and I went into this one that the Beatles were in. And I saw the toilet door move. I just pushed this out, and I could feel it with some of the eyes. Like, "Come on, let's have you out." And 5 girls trooped out. Now, the only way those girls could get in, and I noticed, was a little toilet window half open. One girl had climbed up a spout 2 stories high and got through that window and opened the window, and all the others had climbed up the drain pipe and got in. Oh, buggers. The lads knew I was quite sick, but they went to the rules. And there's another thing about them, I never even saw them smoke. All these stories later on about John and Paul smoking, I never even saw one of them smoke. Not one. Anyhow, they got to the top with "Please, Please Me" from Me to You, and I was at Buxton Pavilion. Now, it was a very low stage. It was a big round dome, but it went into a bottleneck where they're like pushing all the people into that. You see, follow what I mean? This is all round. And I saw a girl go down, swaying like anything. And I jumped off the stage, grabbed her, brought her on stage, and it shows me bringing her around and with the police sergeant on stage, and the Beatles playing behind me, you know.
Pete Best's fun-loving mother Mona was always quick with a quip and friendly with the fans. Here she is at an impromptu press conference at her home in Liverpool in 1990.
Mrs. Best, could you tell me what inspired you to open a club on the outskirts of town where there were no other clubs, purely for the benefit of youngsters?
Oh, well, I used to have them coming in and out of my house as if it was a railway station. And I thought to myself, well, we've got a nice place in the cellar, which of course they'd made their den. And I said, don't you take all your gang and go down there? And they said, well, what are we going to do down here? There's nothing going at all. Let's make it into a club. A little club, and you take it on from there. But the little club ended up with nearly 3,000 members. Every night, well, it used to be jam-packed solid. We used to light the fire, even if it was a hot night, so they'd buy more coke. And everybody used to say, God, it's hot. Another coke, please, Rory. And the coke would be flying, and the people would be enjoying themselves, chock-a-block. But the atmosphere was, I've never seen a club with an atmosphere like that. And I don't think I ever will.
Well, what sort of year was that? Because this was before the Cabin Club, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. Yes. At that time, when I spoke to Ray McFall, he was doing jazz in his club. And he said, I believe, he said, you've opened up a little rock and roll club. I said, yes. He said, why don't you come down? I said, I can't. I said, I'm too busy with my own club. I said, but I said, very good rock and roll group over here called the Beatles. I said, why don't you put them on? So he said, I was thinking of changing over. And he said, maybe I'll do it. And that's how the boys eventually went to play at the Cavern Club.
I spoke to Cavern Club announcer Bob Wooler about his memories of Brian Epstein and the Beatles during a 1983 interview in the Fab's hometown of Liverpool.
And I met the Beatles. Now, I didn't know them really, but I knew the drummer. This drummer was Tommy Moore. Now, he used to work at Garston Docks on the railway with me. He was older than the Beatles, and he did suffer at the hands of the Beatles, especially John Lennon and Paul McCartney. My fourth meeting with them was in the Jacaranda in December 60, where I met two Beatles in the Jacaranda. And they explained to me that they had been to Hamburg and this and the other had happened. So I was then with a promoter called Brian Kelly, and I said, half an hour spot at Litherland Town Hall as an extra. And they agreed to it, and we fought over the fee with Kelly. What was it? Well, I asked Brian Kelly for £8, and he collapsed, and he said £4. I said, well, there were 5 Beatles, you see. Actually, Neil Aspinall was a kind of Beatle. He drove them around. Anyway, after a lot of argy-bargy, it became £6. Now, because I was handling that show, the order of the groups, I was able to give them a very good spot, not an early spot, you see, and not a late spot. I gave them a middle of the bill spot. And of course they transfixed the audience, and that was the beginning of what was later to be coined, not by me, as Beatlemania. Now, of all the Beatles, Stuart Sutcliffe, we used to talk, not just rock and roll, we used to talk about films, books, paintings. He was, as you appreciate, he was quite a painter. Well, it was really more close to his heart than the guitar was, the music. Stuart wasn't a meek and mild person, you know. He could be quite verbally aggressive. So he used to stick up for himself, because John, when he was in the mood, and Paul, they used to shut him down, you see. It wasn't a falling out, it was simply an establishment of a position, of pecking order. Now, lots of things had happened to them, because Epstein was with them, and lots of glowing things were going to happen to them. And in a way, they were rather full of that. In other words, they had rather got out of any emotional feelings for Stuart by then. They'd been coming and going between Liverpool and London. They'd been away on tours around the country. Throughout '63, they actually departed lock, stock and barrel from Liverpool at the end of '63, when Epstein set up a shop in London, where all the publishers and television people are really. And of course he was preparing for your Feb 64 invasion. They had been extremely big in this country, but they rather swept the significance of Kennedy's death in this country. So it seemed a logical step that America would take to them. But of course I had no idea that America would be swept off its feet. Always Lennon's complained, and George Harrison was always concerned about his guitar breaks, you see. And Paul McCartney used to say, go through the motions, and that's all they did.
Few true Beatles fans have anything on Patricia Daniels, besides enjoying the incalculable boon of being born in Liverpool at the same time as her heroes. She often used to see them as teenagers, fast asleep on city buses, drinking too much lager in the local pubs, and best of all, regularly assaulting audiences with the wittiest, raunchiest rock and roll ever made at the famous Cavern Club.
There was a lot of opposition because Pete Best was like the handsome one. And when Ringo came, there was always like, because with him playing with Roddy Storm, and it was like a different type of band altogether. And a lot of them sort of all had the hots for Pete Best, and they thought that was it, Once he goes, they won't like the Beatles anymore.
Who did you like?
Like, say in the Cavern, you'd sit on the front row. If you like Paul, you sat opposite him. If you like John, you sat opposite on the right-hand side. But the last time they played in the Cavern, it was like Liverpool coming home with the cup. Yet again, you just had to be there and, just be part of what was going on. That was like the last chance, Like the people who'd gone to see him for years and years just had to accept that they'd, hit the big time. There was no way you could get them back at a lunchtime session and come down and see them a couple of nights a week.
A veritable giant of a man, Cavern Club doorman Paddy Delaney spoke to me about his days with the Beatles back in Liverpool in 1983. Here's what he had to say.
Well, their appearance on the scene occurred on the 21st of March 1961. And the first one I saw was George Harrison, who ambled down the street. And in them days, hairstyles were very strict and very tidy, as it's worn by teddy boys. His hair was lank, hanging down onto his collar. He was very scruffy. That's our word for it in this country. He looked very trampish and very hungry looking. He ambled down the middle of the street, and for a moment I didn't think he was coming into the Cavern Club, but I stopped him and asked him if he was a member. And I knew he wasn't, but I know that I'd stop him anyway. But he said no, he was with the Beatles, and I knew the Beatles were on that particular night. I couldn't do anything about it, I just had to let him in. But what I did notice, he was wearing jeans, and I'd banned jeans from the club. About 15 minutes later, Paul McCartney ambled down the street with John Lennon in close pursuit. Paul McCartney was carrying his bass guitar. John Lennon, hands dug deep in his pockets, ambled after him. And I had an idea that they might have been the same because he had the same sort of hairstyle. I let them in. And a while afterwards, a taxi came down the street, and sitting in the back was this chap I later knew as Pete Best. He was carrying the Beatles' 2 speakers. He had his set of drums, series of wires and everything, and took him downstairs, and he paid the taxi. Now this is how the Beatles first arrived at the Cavern Club. In later years, when I saw groups arriving at the Cavern Club with like big furniture removal vans, 2 of them, and about 10 men running around moving equipment for 4 or 5 people, I realized that the Beatles actually came from nothing. They came from the earth. And it also matched the music. The music was earthy. Also, the animal magnetism that they had, it was all encased in that one particular moment. They had this thing that if you don't like me, it's just too bad. I'll say no more about it, but I'll tell you this. I saw the gradual build-up from that first meeting up to the stage where a toilet roll was passed down a queue near the height of the Beatles' fame, but he went to America. Passed right down the queue, went right down Matthew Street, right round the corner, and there was five, maybe half a dozen times more than we'd be able to get in the club. And I knew it was my sad duty to turn them away. But I've seen them holding all sorts of objects, all depicting requests. And one of the most outstanding requests I ever saw that happened to get into the club, a toilet roll signed from the very beginning, unrolled, gradually went down the queue and signed by everybody just for one number.
After the Beatles first clicked, virtually every promoter and huckster came to Liverpool looking for virtually anyone who could hold a guitar. Many of those acts, like Cilla Black, Jerry and the Pacemakers, and Billy J. Kramer with the Dakotas, hit it big, if only for a while. Tony Mansfield was drummer for Billy J. Kramer and also great friends with the Beatles, having all been thrown together out on the road working for Epstein. Here's a little of our conversation.
The Beatles certainly paid their dues, especially in Germany, long before we ever went over there. Playing 7 nights a week and learning how to play, really. It was great, because they started writing their own songs because they started running out of songs, apparently, and they started writing their own material. We weren't into doing that. None of us were that talented.
Did you ever see the Beatles record at Abbey Road?
Yes. I saw them do... You Can't Do That. I think they were finishing off that. And we've also been in the... radio. We've done radio shows together. They always had loads of instruments coming in and out, right? And George was a quiet one. He's a nice guy. We've been in a couple of clubs. I've been in the Blue Angel with the boys. I'm drinking Coke here now. Scotch and Coke. I always remember drinking Scotch and Coke in those.
That was Alan Williams,
bit of
the
a
hustler.
Yeah, a real hustler, Alan Williams. Never hurt our band at all. I mean, never worked for Alan, actually. But I always had a lot of respect for him, and I think the feeling was very mutual.
Last time I saw Paul?
It was at Brian's house in 1966, in the summer of 66. We used to do a lot of clubs, where the Beatles... obviously never, they stopped, I think their last gig was 1966, wasn't it? No, well, you see, they got to a stage where, the music they were doing, obviously, was so complex that they couldn't reproduce it live. There just wasn't the technology around to do it on stage like that. Mm-hmm. And I know they had a lot of difficulty, even if you look at the Shea Stadium gig and all that, And it's terrible for a drummer, to try and play when you can't really hear the singer properly, And we used to have that problem an awful lot. So consequently, you didn't play that loud.
Absolutely nobody in show business, before, during, or since, knew how to talk to the press like the Beatles did. With the sole exception of perhaps the Marx Brothers, the Beatles were incredibly witty and refreshing. Although it's all incredibly rare archival material, the Beatles' magic shines through. Here's a press conference in Hollywood to start things off.
One question we like in Hollywood, we'd like to know how you compare movie working to, say, the concert tour or recording sessions.
Well, we don't compare it much,
Would you rather play the Hollywood Bowl again than Dodger Stadium?
We don't really mind.
Maybe we can start another controversy here. One of your countrymen was here yesterday or the day before he returned to England, or on his arrival in England. He said he thought American women were out of style for not wearing miniskirts, and that because they didn't wear miniskirts, their legs were ugly. I'd like to ask you what you think about American women's legs.
Well, if they don't wear miniskirts, how does he know their legs are ugly?
On your album cover that was banned here, first of all, whose idea was it? And second of all, what was it supposed to mean from your standpoint?
What's he say?
Can you say that again?
The album cover that was banned here, the one with the dolls and the meat, whose idea was it? And
the photographers who took it.
John, why did you decide to make How I Won the War, minus the other Beatles?
Because he just asked me, and I just said yes. And it was just like that.
Do you consider that now, since you've been in the United States here for almost a week, that this religious issue is answered once and for all? Would you clarify and repeat the answer that you gave in Chicago?
I can't repeat it again because I don't know what I said,
Well, would you clarify the remarks that were attributed to you?
You tell me what you think I meant, and I'll tell you whether I agree or...
Well, some of the remarks attributed to you in some of the newspapers, the press here, said that concerning the remark that you made comparing the relative popularity of the Beatles with Jesus Christ and that the Beatles were more popular. This created quite a controversy and a furor in this country, as you are obviously aware.
Do you know that, John?
Now, would you clarify the remark?
Well, I've clarified it about 800 times, I could have said TV or something else, and that's as clear as it can be. I just used Beatles because I know about them a bit more than TV. I could have said any number of things. Wouldn't have got as much publicity, though.
My question is directed at all of you. Do you think this controversy has hurt your careers or has helped you professionally? Obviously, you're quite aware of it.
It hasn't helped or hindered it, I don't think. I think most sensible people took it for what it was, and it was only the bigots that took it up and thought it was, on their side. They thought, here's something to get them for. But when they read it, they saw that, there was nothing wrong with it, really. It's just that they thought that by us saying, by John saying that we were more popular than Jesus, they thought, he's bound to be arrogant. And did you see the fellow on telly last night? He said it. Tonight Show.
John, what stimulates you in your work?
Just anything,
And also, what's your favorite group in the U.S.?
Favorite what?
Group in the United States.
I've got a few, Birds, Spoonful, Mamas and Papas, I suppose.
Beach
Of that
Boys.
side of it. And Miracles, etc. on the other side of it.
My question concerns money. I was wondering if you still have an arrangement with the U.S. Internal Revenue Department to pay your taxes to England through them. Another part of the question is, how much money have you grossed in your current U.S. tour, and is it true that you lost?
We don't know.
Money's got nothing
we don't
to
know
do with
about
us.
that. We don't do the money side of it, Brian does that.
And we don't particularly
They
worry
just tell
about
us
it.
what we get in the end.
The tax thing.
We pay tax and things, but we don't know how much or how much we've made or anything, because if we were going to worry about that, we'd be nervous wrecks by now.
I'd like to direct this question to Messrs. Lennon and McCartney. In a recent article, Time magazine put down pop music, and they referred to Day Tripper as being about a prostitute, and Norwegian Wood as being about a lesbian. Now, I just wanted to know what your intent was when you wrote it, and what your feeling is about the Time magazine criticism of the music that is being written today.
We were just trying to write songs about prostitutes and lesbians, that's all.
Do you have will you be working separately in the future? Or together?
Pardon? So all together, probably.
Together? John Lennon, aren't you doing a picture alone?
Yeah, but that's only in the holiday bit,
I see.
in between Beatle.
Fred Paul from KASK. First of all, I'd like to say hi to you all again. It's really good to see you. And so,
go on, Fred.
I'd like to ask a question that you've never been asked before. What are you going to do when the bubble bursts?
Well, Fred. That's a personal in-joke. He used to ask it at every press conference we went to keep the party going.
Do you think we'll have another tour again next year?
Could be, Fred. Could be. Brian does that.
Thank you very much.
He does a lot of it, Fred.
Outside in Hollywood tonight, you had to arrive in an armored truck, and the truck was swarmed by adoring fans. What is the situation wherever you go? Do you ever have an opportunity to walk out in the street without being recognized, or can you walk into a theater to see a movie by yourself?
If you go when the lights are down, you can go in.
We can do that in England. It's easier in England than it is here. And it's mainly because we know England better.
It'd also be easier to do it if we were on tour, Because we're on tour, people know where we are, that's why we have a crowd.
Yes,
I waved that
Paul? Paul?
Sorry.
Many of the top artists and musicians in the pop field today have said that the Beatles have been a major influence in their music. Are there any other artists who have an important influence on you, the music you create?
Oh, yes. Nearly everyone. We pinch as much from other people as they pinch from us,
Ringo, do you carry wild pictures of your baby with you?
No.
No? Why?
I don't carry photos of anything,
Thank you.
You can remember.
May I ask about the song Eleanor Rigby? What was the motivation or inspiration for that?
Two queers.
John, did you ever...
Two barrow boys.
Oh, this is getting disgusting. What?
John, did you ever meet Cass of the Mamas and Papas?
Yes, and she's great, and I'm seeing her tonight.
Good.
Yeah, she's good.
Have you ever trained or used Beatle doubles as decoys?
No.
We tried to get Brian Epstein to do it. He wouldn't do it.
Ringo, one question. How much did you contribute to What Goes On? And are you contributing to any other Lennon-McCartney compositions?
About 5 words to What Goes On, and I haven't done a thing since.
Like the dresses to John and Paul. You write a lot of stuff that other people steal from you and also purchase from you in different arrangements, Ella Fitzgerald and a lot of the Boston Pops and stuff like that. When you listen to this on the radio or records and stuff, how do you feel about them using your pieces and changing them around to suit their styles?
Depends how they do it, you know.
The thing is, they don't steal it.
No, I know that.
Well, you just said they did.
Well, sometimes.
Okay. No, I mean, you know, it's once we've done a song and it's published, anyone can do it. So, you know, whether we like it or not depends on whether they've done it to our taste. You know,
well, then let's ask it this way. Who do you think does it the best, the Beatles songs?
Us.
Who?
Us.
Oh.
For those of us that have followed your career from the early days of Liverpool and Hamburg, and the pride in you've been awarded the MBE, and the dismay at the unwarranted adverse publicity of late, the question is, individually, what has been your most memorable occasions, and what has been the most disappointing?
Well, no idea. You know, there's so many.
I think Manila was the most disappointing.
Yeah. And the most exciting is yet to come.
Gentlemen?
Maybe the most disappointing.
Gentlemen, there was quite a laugh when you went on the stock market with your stock. How is your stock doing?
Fine, thank you.
Well, it went down, but it's coming up again.
It's gone
It went down
down.
after
It's the same as any other stock, you know.
It goes down every time, and the LPs drop out. They all think they're buying bits of records.
All of you. Leonard Bernstein likes your music. How do you like Leonard Bernstein?
Very good. He's, you know, great.
One of the greatest.
I'd like to. How has your image changed since '63? Is it a little more? Is it the same?
An image is how you see us, so you know you can only answer that.
You're the only one that knows.
Who's that? Oh.
It's you.
Oh,
You.
well. No, I want to get your opinion. Is it a little tarnished now? Is it more realistic, or what would you say it is? I know I have my opinion,
We haven't
but
got any tags for our opinion.
We can't tell you our image, you know. We can only our image is what we read in the newspapers, and that's the same as you read, you know. I mean, we know our real image, which is nothing like our image.
forget it.
And what I meant to say was,
I like take 2 bricks.
Who is the young man with the lengthy haircut to your right rear?
Right rear.
It's good old Dave, isn't it? Where is he?
Who is it?
Dave from the Birds, a mate of ours. Yahoy, mateys.
Shy.
Do you ever plan to record in the United States, and why haven't you yet?
We tried, actually, but it was a financial matter. Bit of trouble over that one. No, we tried, but didn't come
Internal
out.
politics.
Hush, hush.
Dice.
No comment.
Mr. Lennon, is it true you're planning to give up music for a career in the field of comparative religion?
No. Is that another of the jokes going on?
I'm sure you've all heard of the many Beatle burnings and Beatle bonfires. And I was
Yes.
wondering, do you think American girls are fickle?
All girls are fickle.
Well, the photos we saw of them were a sort of middle-aged DJs and 12-year-olds burning a pile of LP covers.
This question is directed to Paul and John. You have written quite a few numbers for Peter and Gordon, and I understand they don't like it because they think that it's you writing the song that makes it popular. Do you plan to write any more songs for him?
They, if we write songs for, they ask us to write songs for them if we do it. I mean, they don't mind it. They like it, but it's, people come up and say, we see you just getting in on the Lennon-McCartney bandwagon. That's why they did that one with our names not on it, Woman. Because everyone sort of thinks that's the reason they get hits. It's not true, really.
Gentlemen, what do you think would happen to you four if you came to an appearance without the armored truck and without police?
We'd get in a lot easier.
We wouldn't make it. We couldn't do it.
It depends, Sometimes we could have easily made it much better without the armored truck. But today, probably we wouldn't have.
You think you'd be physically harmed?
Oh, yeah, probably.
What do you think?
Yes, I think so.
Could be.
Gentlemen, the New York Times Magazine of Sunday, July 3, carried an article by Maureen Cleave in which she quotes the Beatles, not by name, as saying, "Show business is an extension of the Jewish religion." Would you mind amplifying that?
I said that to her as well. No comment.
Oh. Come on, John. Tell me what you mean.
I mean, you can read into it what you like, It's just a little old statement. It's not very serious,
I was wondering, under what condition did you write "in his own right"? That's sort of wild, those kicky words. I mean, how did you, piece them together?
Oh, I don't know.
And do you have any more books coming?
Yes, and I can't answer that. It's just the way it happens.
Any more books coming?
I didn't think, how can I do this?
Sit down and just like an author.
Just like an author.
John.
I hope so,
John?
I don't know. It'll never be the same.
I understand there's a suit pending against the Beatles by Peter Best, who claims to be a former member of the Beatles. Is that true? Was he once a former?
I think he's had a few, but we don't bother with those.
Is this the last question? Are all of your news conferences like this?
No.
Well,
that's not the last
I'm talking about all of the reporters or would-be reporters or semi-reporters that show up. Are you besieged by these kind of people throughout the tours that you travel here in the United States?
You can't always tell the would-bes from the real thing. So we
Is it
know.
this way when you travel in Europe?
Yes.
But what's wrong with the crowd?
Nothing. I'm just wondering if you have this many reporters everywhere you go.
Not always.
But some of them are just onlookers.
On tomorrow. Is this
the
tomorrow?
last question. Thank you.
All right, tomorrow never comes. It's the last cut on the second side, right?
Tomorrow never knows.
Tomorrow never knows. Thank you. Could you give me a vague idea of some of the tape manipulation you used when your voice drops into the track, John? Is that sung backwards by any chance and then recorded forward?
No, it's not sung backwards. It's just.
Yeah, to do that.
It's just recorded pretty straight. There's nothing really. There's tape loops on it, which are a bit different, and the words are from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So there. It's there, nearly. Oh well.
Right, now can we do the presentation that we were going to do slightly earlier from Alan J. Livingston, President of Capitol Records.
When the boys come here, we always take advantage of the opportunity to present them with another gold record because there's always one or more waiting for them. There's a little significance to this particular record in that by receiving this, they will have received more gold records than any artist of any kind or type in the history of the Record Industry Association. So, this is for a revolver.
It's a double-barreled question directed at both George and Paul, who are the two remaining...
We're not getting married now.
Okay. Who are direct... That's all I wanted to know. You're both the only bachelors, and you're not going to give us any indication of what your matrimonial plans might be.
In fact, soon we're going to just get an answering service for press conferences for that question.
Thank you very much.
We're both queer anyway, Write that one in your magazines.
Paul, do you feel that your vacation here in Los Angeles was a success, even though you didn't have very much privacy?
Yeah.
You had a chance to relax. What was your...
We did have a lot of privacy.
Did you mind the girls on the hill?
No.
Well, what was your most enjoyable part of your vacation?
Pardon?
What was the most enjoyable part of your vacation?
Just lazing around. Yeah, I think. And visiting Elvis.
Well, may I direct this question towards Paul and John? I understand you're Dylan fans.
We all
are you?
All of us are.
You all Dylan fans?
Even me, yeah.
Even George and Ringo like you.
Even the non-musical members of the group.
You don't plan on, I don't want to correct Ringo, but you'll be back from San Francisco at the time the Dylan concert will be on.
Because we leave exactly. We play the same night that he's here.
And we leave on Wednesday for England.
And we saw him in Britain, you know, and it was good, but we're not going to flog it.
Did any of you help Mr. Epstein write his book?
Pardon?
Did any of you help Mr. Epstein
No,
write his
no.
book?
No, he needed a bit, but we couldn't.
A couple of the tunes in Help sounded as if the sound might be changing just a little, getting even more sort of traditionally blues-oriented. Maybe this is just an opinion.
No,
do you feel that there's any change in the sound?
We try and change every record. You know, we've tried to change from the first record we made. And if you progress musically, then you naturally change.
If you play our early records and the late, even though we haven't made all that many, there's a lot of difference, you know.
We're not trying to do it consciously, you know, particularly.
Even recording technique, if you improve that slightly, your sound changes, basically.
Ringo, I understand that the record album Help has 4 different numbers in the English version and in the United States version. Is this true, and if so, why?
Yeah,
Because
we're in
on the
Capitol
English
now.
album there's 14 tracks, and they're all on numbers, and on the American one, I don't know how many tracks there are, but then you've got some...
There's 7 of
bands
us.
playing
It's
on
Vito's
the-
Capital issue, all sort of mad stuff, you know, it's nothing to do with us. We make 14 tracks to be put out, but they keep a couple and it's a stick them out drag. later. It's a drag because, you know, the album, we make an album to be like an album and to be
plan it,
a complete thing. And we send it over here. No offense, Capital, but send it over here. And they put the soundtrack on. And if someone's going to buy one of our records, I think they want to hear us and not soundtrack. They even changed the photograph off the front and put something daft on. Yeah, either that or they should make it all
If the
soundtrack.
Capital would like to come round after, we'll settle it.
We'll see him.
John and Pa?
Hope so.
John, did you know that 4 girls have been circling above your home in a helicopter?
I heard about 2 girls that have been in a helicopter.
What?
But that's all. 4?
Four
Were they
girls.
driving it? We were in bed at the time.
What do you think of the groupies, or the girls that make a business of chasing groups?
I think it's terrible.
Do any of you go to church?
No. Not lately.
What's your program for the next few months, say for the next 3 or 4 months? Like concerts or...
Depends
or
on what
whatever.
Mr. Epstein wants to see.
We
have
a month
off
as soon as we get back,
and it'll most probably just be TV and records and... TV and bull rings and things like that. He likes that sort of stuff.
There have been some quotes on some radio stations in which you put down the movie magazines. You said that the things that they are saying are unfair, like Ringo always waves, and some movie magazine said that he did not wave, and television proved it. My question is, do you feel that, number one, there is a difference between the treatment that you have received by movie magazines and all other magazines, and teenage magazines specifically?
Well, the teen ones and the movie ones are written by people that never leave the office, and they just make it all up, you know, and it's a lot of rubbish. But there's nothing we can do about it, because the libel laws are so peculiar over here. Well,
Yeah,
movie magazines were talking about it, the same kind of thing, you know.
But the thing is that teen magazines, like 16 magazine, well, even though the stuff they write is still rubbish, it's not as bad as the movie mags, but it's still rubbish.
But there's some great magazines, you know, and some crummy ones like Anywhere, but there's just a few more crummy ones over here, I think. I mean, you know, you've got to admit it. If someone puts in, you know, is Richard Burton dying?
I've just
then
read
there's a whole
about him
article.
leaving the group as
He's
well
leaving the
yesterday.
group, definitely.
I mean,
definitely
what can
married
you do
to one
about that? You know, you can't sue him here. What can you do?
It's
and you
fun
can't
to read,
ring
you
them
know.
up and say, I'm not leaving the group. Where did you get this from? Because then they get big publicity out of it. So you just got to leave it. But we just keep telling everybody that lousy and hoping the kids will gradually cotton on, just buy them for the photographs and don't believe all the rubbish.
The thing is, if you read them like fiction instead of fact, it's much better,
But you get all these letters, and are you really leaving? Or is Paul married? And have you got 12 wives? And all that stuff,
I love them,
and
though.
it's worrying.
It's nice to read I've got 12 wives.
John and Paul, in creation of a Beatles song, between inception and actual creation of the product, what's the process and how long does it take?
It varies.
It's just sitting down and working it out, It can take days or it can just take a couple of hours. Depends on how easy it is. Sir.
Pa? I'd like to ask Ringo which country he enjoyed touring the best of everything that he's...
America. I enjoy America, It's so different to England. I mean, all the other places are different, but at least you can speak to people over here, In a way,
Paul, how do you go about selecting the songs you are going to do for a concert?
We just do, on a concert, we just do songs that are known, that's all. So we just pick the songs that are best known.
Is there one particular favorite that you do at many of the concerts?
We do most of them, most of the ones that we do now. We've done
most of the
at all the
popular
concerts. All our records,
What group do you consider the largest challenge to your popularity? Could I ask Paul, please?
Yeah. You can ask me, I don't know, though.
There's a new one every week,
Yeah, the Silky, I think. Big challenge there. Up and coming.
Do any of you actually get any fan mail at all, or is it all channeled through your fan clubs?
We get one.
Yeah, we get it because 16 magazine prints our addresses in, handily for the fans.
Well, do you ever actually answer it, or also do you accept registered letters from fans?
Yeah, we get a lot of mail that we answer ourselves.
But
But there's so much of it
The
goes
main
into fan
trouble
club
with
branches and offices
The mail
all over
from
the world.
America is that they put self-addressed envelopes with American stamps on. If they thought a minute, they'd know that it doesn't work. They should put English ones on.
Or would you mail it if they put English ones on?
We answer quite a bit, especially when we get months off. You're standing there at 9 o'clock waiting for the postman for something to do.
Paul, you've been described as having the face of a typical matinee idol. How do you feel about this?
I don't feel about that, I hate that. Oh, I'm not. Rugged, okay.
5 o'clock matinee.
Last summer in San Francisco, a doctor said that the Beatles were instruments of the communist propaganda. That you were softening up and corrupting America's youth.
Yes.
What did you say to that?
Watch out next year.
Yeah, doctor of what?
Who was it who said it?
Who was he,
He's
There's
just
so
some
many nuts
halfwit,
over here. They call themselves doctors and sergeants and things.
We're all capitalists anyway, don't worry. Capitalists, get it?
It went down well in Chicago.
There was a lot of criticism over your being awarded the Royal Order of the British
We
Empire.
didn't get the order, we got the MBE, whatever that one is.
The MBE.
Not the
Members of
OBE.
the British Empire, not the Royal Order.
Yeah, but the order's a better one.
Anyway,
we got the...
it's the first step on the way to knighthood, right?
Tisn't at all.
I thought it was.
We don't give enough to charity for...
It is for
some
beer.
I see. But anyway, there were some members who had received the same award who had turned theirs in. Well, what is your reaction to this?
Well, ours were civil awards, and theirs were sort of, what are they called?
Military heroes.
They got them for killing people, and I think, we deserve
don't
ours
kill
for not
anybody.
killing people.
Anyway, we've got them and they haven't.
And most of them were sort of French Canadians,
You know what they're
what are
like.
they moaning about?
If they send any more back...
what American group do you admire the most?
The Birds.
The Birds, yeah. And they admire the Loving Spoonful.
Yeah, they like the Loving Spoonful.
I'd like to direct this question to any one of you. Is it true? We heard a rumor over here that your English, your British version of the last movie, Hard Day's Night, was longer than ours over here. Is this true?
No.
And were there portions, a great deal of the movie help cut?
You get the same film as
You get
anybody else gets.
nearly the same film, only we have
You
to...
don't get the same film.
I think you do, but the thing is, for America, we have to cut out the word toilet.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
We have to call it a bathroom.
for America.
Right, this has to be the last question.
That's true.
That's true.
We have to cut out a few words because they
What do
wouldn't
you
take
think
it
of
all.
your movie A Hard Day's Night being nominated for an Academy Award? What do you think of that?
It's funny, isn't it? That's all.
There's been a lot of controversy over the fact that since there's so much screaming at your concerts, you don't sort of rehearse them before or worry too much about them. Is that true?
We never have.
Well, we always sing songs that we know. Because we must know them because we recorded them, so we don't need to rehearse them, do we?
And it doesn't bother us.
The only thing we've got to know is which ones we're doing.
The thing is, we still don't rehearse for places where they can hear us, like on the Ed Sullivan Show. And, when it comes on television, you can hear it. Sort of, much better than at a concert. We still don't rehearse for that. We never have,
I read something recently that you are worrying about the Beatles being brought down. Certain people are interested in getting the Beatles over with.
I don't know. I think that's a bit of a one that's, I don't really know about that story, honestly. There's nobody, I've never said, there's nobody trying to pull us down. And I agree that if we were slipping, there's lots of people that'd clap hands, Daddy, come home.
What kind of people do you think would be interested?
I don't know, because they never show themselves until that time arises when it's ripe for them.
Do you feel you are slipping?
We don't feel we're slipping. Our music's better. Our sales might be less. So, in our view, we're not slipping,
How many years do you think you can go on? Have you thought about that?
It doesn't matter, The thing is...
we just try and go forward. And
the thing is, if we do slip, it doesn't matter, so what? We slip. And so we're not popular anymore, so we'll be all unpopular, won't we? We'll be like we were before, maybe.
And we can't invent a new gimmick to keep us going like people imagine we do.
Didn't you say that Britain is becoming a police state?
Oh, I'll tell you, we've really been putting our feet in it lately. You can't say anything, without it turning into the worst quote ever.
I mean, somebody just in passing saying it to a friend, you see. That's what we forget we're Beatles sometimes. You can't help it. We're still us inside. And if you say something like that, I didn't say it, it was one other. But when you say something like, Britain's becoming a police state, you say it exactly the same as anybody in a pub saying it to their friend across the bar. About some sweeping statement, which they can't back up anyway.
And it's obvious it's not to be taken literally, because if it was, then you wouldn't be allowed to say that, would you?
Oh, I'd like to ask you, with your music and your lyrics, do you write the lyrics or do you write the music? Is John is the other way around with John?
No, with the songs that we write, we both write lyrics and music, and it depends, like with some songs I write lyrics and music, and so does John with some other songs. On some, we just get together and just do a line each, words and music each. Depends, how it happens and what kind of mood we're in. It's normally no formula about it, though.
How did you feel about your performance out there today? I think it's answered all
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, it was quite good. The thing was that the amps broke down, in one of the numbers, because there was some business with one of the wires broke or something, so which was a bit of a drag, but nobody seemed to notice.
Do you think that this God thing is quashed forever now?
Well, it should be, the amount of time we've spent on it, and I don't know, all last night, trying to explain to everyone about it, so we didn't really mean it like that, And I think, from what I've seen of the people who've heard what we had to say about it, they seem to think it's okay now, It should be, because I didn't think it was ever un-okay.
About the Revolver album, the Indian sounds that you're getting on it.
Yeah.
Who is mainly responsible for this side of the
Indian sounds?
The Indian sounds.
George. Yeah.
George has been stuck.
Definitely, mainly George, because we started off, just hearing Indian music and sort of listening to things, and we liked the drone idea, because we'd done a bit of that kind of thing in songs before, But George got very interested in it and went to a couple of Ravi Shankar concerts, and then he sort of met Ravi and sort of was knocked out by him, and thought, like, just as a person, he's an incredible fella, He's one of the greatest. And he thought he didn't know that George was serious about it. And so when he found out George was serious, he was knocked out too. So the two of them are having a great time. And, you know, that's how we've got Indian sounds on at the moment. Because the thing is, anyway, it's nice to sort of start bridging the two kinds of music. You know, because we just started off in a very simple way. And then this album's got a bit better. I mean, it's a little bit more like Indian music. And it helps people to understand it too, because it's very hard at first to understand, yeah. Once you get into it, it's the greatest.
Who decided on this Tomorrow Never Knows, Weird Effects?
Weird Effects. Well, see, we wrote the song, and it was a very funny song from the start, because John came up with the lyrics to it. And he'd just been reading Tibetan Book of the Dead. And he was dead impressed by it, you know, very impressed. And he decided that he'd write the song, and we only had one verse. I think we stretched it to sort of 2 verses, and we couldn't think of any more words because we'd sort of said it all what we wanted to say in about 2 verses. So we had to try and work out how to sort of do it and how to make it different. So I decided to do some of those loops that I'd been doing on my home tape recorder, and they're just tape loops, and I'd been making them. So I just took about a bag full of 6 tape loops to the session, and we just tried them and mixed them in and brought them in those places. And so I suppose it was sort of vaguely my idea, that bit of it.
Did you find opposition from people who want you to play to the teenagers?
Yeah, well, the thing is, you see, we've kept quite a few songs on the album. I mean, if we just suddenly did exactly what we'd want to do, in fact, I think actually at the moment that is what we want to do, what we've done on Revolver. But if we did like all the way out things, I mean, I suppose people think they're way out. I don't actually, but that kind of thing. If we did a whole album of them, then we'd be doing what like the people who do electronic music do. They go too far out too suddenly, and no one stays with them. You know, everyone else is left behind because they're miles out ahead, sort of digging all this electronic stuff. But in fact, what we've tried to do is like do the last album, Rubber Soul, a bit more towards that, then this one a bit more, and the next one should be a bit more. And if people stay with us, you know, it's great. Lovely.
Who decided the 2 tracks to go as the single from Revolver?
From the LP?
Yeah.
I think we all did, you know. I think it was a case of, we knew that when the album came out, there would be quite a few people going to cover it, so we thought we might as well have the hit, you know.
I think another Rigby will be another Yesterday.
I don't know. I don't think actually. The only thing that's similar to Yesterday is the fact that there's violins and stringed instruments on it. Apart from that, I think it's nothing to do with it. You know? Completely different kind of tune. I think it's better in a way, but I sang Yesterday better. I sang Eleanor Rigby terrible. Wow, no, it's very bad. No, it's you listen to it, you know, and it's. Listen, okay.
Actually, then, for what your music now is improving every time, and you're making the lyrics more interesting also, aren't you?
Well, see, that's the thing. I mean, if we stayed where we were in, say, 1960 when we were doing Love Me Do and Please Please Me and From Me to You, which was one kind of thing, you know, it was a kind of thing people liked. The thing is, if we did that now, I think our fans, the kind of fans that we got now, wouldn't like that too much, because it'd be going back and it'd be retracing your steps, you know. And also from our point of view, we're never going to do that, because I mean, if we ever have to do that, if anyone suddenly says you're going too way out and you've got to get back to then, well, we'll give up, you know.
Recently, at the last press reception, which I didn't think it was too grand, we had in Washington, that is, the questions that were asked, one of them said that were on about the crowds at the stadiums just recently, and they wanted to know how you felt about it, because they were, say, 20,000, 25,000, where before you used to get more.
But yeah, I don't mind about that. You know, the thing is, the people keep saying to us, look, your record sales have gone down and your concert appearances have gone down. But the thing is that compared with anyone else, they haven't. And the only people who set the records beforehand were us, you know, like for the concerts. But apparently at the moment we still play to more people than any other group does.
That's correct.
And so, I mean, you know, that doesn't worry us, because everyone else goes down in proportion. I mean, the only time if we were going to be worried by the whole sort of rat race, which we're not, you know, it doesn't really worry us. But if it did worry us, it might be when, for instance, another group started selling more records or more seats than us. Then we might get a bit worried, you know. But this doesn't worry us at all. We're still doing fine, you know.
But don't you think that the time when it comes, when there'll be no more open-air performances or indoor performances for you, that your records will still be going on selling even 10 years from now?
Well, I don't know. You see, this is the thing, actually, that we are more interested, really, in making music than we are probably in actually performing it, because we're not very good performers, you know. We haven't ever been able really to do what we've been able to do on records, on the stage. And also when we play these big concerts, you know, it gets a bit more impossible each time to sort of get over to the people what you're trying to get over. So we're tending a bit more to get this over on records, you know, in the lyrics of words and in the lyrics of songs, I mean. You know, so that I think that's getting a bit more important, and I hope it does go on for about, you know, as long as you like.
Well, actually, then, with your recordings and also coming about your open performances, you're improving yourself each time.
Well, I hope so, you know. I think probably we are, you know. But, yeah, we're trying to anyway.
Speaking of back home in England, Paul, where is it you're exactly living now? Is it in the centre of London or out on one of the counties?
No, it's just about 2 minutes outside London, in St John's Wood, you know.
St John's Wood?
Yeah.
You're not living in Weybridge or Esher with the other lads?
No, well, you see, the kind of house I wanted is like only exists sort of, well, mainly exists a couple of minutes out of London. And also I like cities, you know, so I got the house there. I mean, I did think, obviously, you know, well, I ought to sort of go out to Weybridge and things, but I mean, I've talked to the others about it since, and we've all decided that it would be silly for me to, like, buy a house in Weybridge that I wasn't very keen on. You know, just to sort of go along with the whole thing. And we can still get to see each other dead easily. You know, I mean, we only live sort of at the most, say, half an hour away from each other. So we're still in pretty good contact, you know, and if I want to go out for a swim, I go out to their place.
Oh, marvellous. Well, now, when you get back home from this tour, will you be taking a holiday, say, in Spain or somewhere like this?
I don't know, actually. I may do. We've got a few weeks off, you know. But I know, see, for instance, we want to do a record for Christmas. You know, we want to have a record for Christmas. So we've got to start thinking about that now, you know. We've got to start thinking about the next film that we do. So there's a lot of things, you know, it's like these people who start opening Christmas clubs in June. You know, we've got to start thinking about things like that now. So it'll be a holiday, but I think it'll be a holiday in which we'll be trying to think of things for when it isn't a holiday, you know. But, I mean, we'll take it easy.
I heard you took a trip to Spain before once, didn't you, on holiday?
I didn't go to Spain, no. I tried once to make Spain, and John and I were going to hitchhike. But we hitchhiked down from Liverpool. We didn't hitchhike, no, we got the train down from Liverpool because we thought, well, we won't hitchhike the first bit. And we got the boat over to Paris, and we got the train into Paris because we thought, well, it'd be too hard to get a hitch here. And we just stayed in Paris all week. Eventually, I mean, all the time trying to get out of Paris and make Spain, you know. We never made it. We just flew home at the end. Real lazy hitchhiking holiday.
By the way, I'd like to ask you just one more, because what do you think about the other night at Cleveland when we had the great rush of the young people there for the show?
Well,
how did you feel about that?
Well, the thing is, you see, that I was talking to someone about our shows, and I was saying that the great thing nowadays about our shows is it's a completely different thing from what it used to be. It used to be that we performed and that everyone sort of sat back and listened to us in the very early days, and occasionally sort of joined in. But as it's gone bigger and bigger, and the whole thing has sort of improved a lot, it's gone along the track of the audience participating an awful lot, you know. So, I mean, now, for instance, when the kids are all shouting and things, it's part of our show. You know, the audience is half of our show, you know, easily. And we're sort of less of our show than we used to be. But, I mean, we don't mind that. It's great to have somebody else working on a show with you, you know. It's like all those people are in our act, you know. Yeah. So that's fine. I mean, we love that. And so, for instance, when they do break through and things, as long as, like, nobody gets hurt, and as long as it's not too dangerous. Because, I mean, you know, we've been through more dangerous things. We used to have fights when we started off, I mean, in the audience. You know, we're a lot more dangerous than that. Like, there'd be 100 fellas fighting another 100 from the next district. And, you know, there'd be bottles and chairs going all over the place, and that was more dangerous than it gets now. So, I mean, it doesn't particularly worry us. As long as nobody else gets
gets her. We love it, love every minute of it.
But actually, I think the other night at Cleveland, when all these youngsters sieged forward, it wasn't the act of violence or anything like this. It was more love for you than anything else.
But I don't think any of them are violent. They just come along. There's maybe one or two in a crowd of about 1,000 that's violent, but generally they just want to. I mean, for instance, the other night they all just came to the front of the stage. Nobody really tried to make much effort to get up on the stage. Admittedly there were sort of big gang of coppers saying get off, but I think they just wanted to sort of see us, listen to us, and that. It wasn't too bad at all. I enjoyed it.
Well, actually, what we're trying to say now is that the Beatlemania is still here in America, and you're still loved, even though the papers might put words differently. So you've proved the point, haven't you?
Well, I think the thing is that, like every newspaper anywhere, when they get articles about Beatlemania and so many seats sold out and things, they can't go on forever writing that because it's no longer news after a bit. They've got to start knocking because it's the only way they can get any news out of it, and talk about us, or else they don't talk about us. So they try and find sort of the knocking things in what we say, like John's remark on Christianity, and they try and knock it because it makes a big news story for them. But it doesn't worry us that, because we just go along, we do the same things we always did in a way, and we don't worry about them.
As charismatic as he is outgoing and controversial, Alistair Taylor was one of the best interviews I ever had relating to the Beatles. He was quick, on target, and really, really funny. We spoke together in a New York hotel room in the late 80s about, just about everything relating to his time with the Fab Four. Long since having left show business completely, Alistair looks back on his time with the Beatles with a mixture of regret, deep emotion, compassion, and, as I said, a great sense of humor. We began our conversation by discussing the untimely death of Brian Epstein.
Yes, I don't think, there's a lot been said about how he went around saying they were going to be bigger than Elvis and all that. I can't remember it being as blatant as that. I don't know what the right word is. We were enthusiastic, he was, and we went for lunch that same day, and we sat and we talked and what we should do. But I think that the great excitement came a little later when it dawned on him that he'd signed them. It was just something new. It was fun. He came twice. I had a phone call from him saying goodbye. He was committing suicide. And I've often said, in many ways, I would have been happier, I suppose, if he had committed suicide.
You don't think he did?
No, he didn't.
What happened?
Accidental death. I was there, behind the doctor, 30 seconds. You see, this is the times I have been asked the question, why did he commit suicide? And I want someone to tell me where it is said that he committed suicide. The verdict by the coroner was accidental death. The whole survey revealed accidental death. There were only two people in that room. One was the doctor and one was myself. Right? And I've never said it was suicide. I've heard stories about there was a note found. I didn't find it. There's a lot of bullshit being talked about Apple. Apple was set up purely and simply as a tax-saving project. Instead of paying 19 and 6 in the pound, we could only pay 16 shillings, right? And in the beginning, when there was an executive board of Apple, the boys and Brian didn't want to know, right? It was Clive Epstein, myself, Geoffrey Ellis, a solicitor and an accountant. And the idea was that we would just quietly get on and announce to the tax authorities that we would be opening a string of shops. That was the original idea. And the boys heard about this and they decided this could be boring, right? And they didn't want their name above a string of what the original idea was greetings card shops. Imagine Beatles greeting card shops. And they didn't dig that at all. And they started drifting in on meetings. And it evolved from that. And it really became more so that it turned into this silly philosophy, admittedly. But all it really was to get rid of the hassle of big business. Why couldn't business be fun and pleasure? That's all. That's what it was all about.
Neil Innes, a founder member of the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, Monty Python, and the acting talent behind the role of Nasty in the Ruttles, recalls the incredible burden of being a real live Beatle.
Because it must be,
quite grueling to sort of be placed when, in such a thing, because you've made some popular records and you're a rock and roll band, that people will bring people in wheelchairs up to you so that you can touch them and
heal them,
make them better, So on the whole, it doesn't, make for a healthy ego, all that stuff. But on the whole, I think all the Beatles survived the madness of it, really quite well.
Australian-born broadcaster, author, and journalist Richie York seems to have been around forever. Wherever there was a scene, Richie inevitably found his way in, and not only hung out, but contributed to the buzz that was happening. In 1969, he worked as a personal assistant to John and Yoko for some time. He was there when John met Prime Minister Trudeau in Canada, was standing right behind the often beleaguered Beatle at the Ontario Science Centre for his peace conference, and helped to organize the biggest rock festival that never was, John and Yoko's infamous Peace Festival of 1969. We talked about all this and more in 1982 at my home in Toronto.
John grew and Paul didn't. I guess that's what it comes down to. Yeah, John grew with Yoko. It was like you can't give her the rap at breaking him up or anything like that. John certainly imposed them, on the Let It Be film station. Said, and they'd always been together, the four of them making the records. Yoko had to be in on it, that was he wouldn't come unless Yoko was there, so. Because she was like a fifth Beatle to them. They sort of saw us coming between them and John, but he wanted to demonstrate his independence. He wanted to say, hey, But I do what I like, boys. You do what you like. I do what I like. That was John's attitude. Yeah, he had the bag one office. He had the front room, the best room in the place. It was the bag one office, yeah. But it was autonomous, and that created a lot of ill feeling among the office staff. Derek on down. No one liked, or Peter Brown, any of them. None of them liked the fact that John realised he didn't want to be part of this trip. A lot of intrigues were going on too in the Apple empire, with Alan Klein trying to get in and John trying to get him in, and not knowing who you could trust. John was real keen on him at the time. He thought he would, straighten out the business thing. But, I could see, I didn't like Alan Klein personally. No, I didn't. But, I could see, where it was coming from, and he was desperately afraid anything to do with the peace venture whatsoever, because Alan Klein's big plan was to put the Beatles back on the road early in 1970 for one farewell tour, and he was starting to put that together, and he figured he could get John and Paul back together, and he had John sort of half enthused about it,
In mid-1994, Harry Nilsson, that famous singer from the 60s and 70s, passed away at home of a heart attack. Like his good friend Keith Moon before him, Harry had lived many lifetimes within his short years. One of his most famous roles, though, was as John Lennon's best friend, a relationship he coveted right up until the day he died. I spoke to him about John, the Beatles, and much more at an anti-handgun rally in New York.
I had to hold Ringo's hand for a week. You know what that's like?
No.
It's like saying, listen, man, if I could take it from you, I would. But I can't. But if I would, I could. I just can't. There's nothing I can do. But let's do something about it, maybe. Let's put an end to some of the stupidity. Ringo and I speak a couple times a week. We're very, very dear friends. Good night, Ringo.
Sleep tight.
He's my pal. He was best man at our wedding. He's one of the dearest friends you can have in life. He's godfather to our children, and I hope I'm his best pal in life. George and I are very, very good friends. Paul is just Paul. I don't know. I've known Paul over the years, but I don't know him like Ringo or George. I knew John a lot more than Paul. Paul is an amazing guy. Smokes his joints and whistles his way through life. God bless him too.
Shambhu Das, Ravi Shankar's longtime aide, remembers the Beatles' search for something beyond the incredible success that they had wrought for themselves.
All the Beatles came India with Maharshi, Transcendental Meditation, Maharshi. What I feel, they are looking for something in the life beyond the reputation, beyond the money, beyond some kind of a settlement, peace, whatever you say. Probably they are looking for that kind of peace of mind or something.
Perhaps my biggest coup as a journalist to date was my 1983 interview with Yoko Ono at her Dakota apartment home in New York. Here's a brief snippet of our conversation.
After John died, somehow when people call me Mrs. Lennon, I felt good about it. When people write to me saying, well, we're grieved over John's death and we just wanted to know how his widow was doing or whatever. And that would have maybe made me feel a bit strange 2 years ago, you know. But now I'm grateful that people are writing because they love John and concerned about, by the way, his family. That's fine. Yes, I am, by the way, family, you know. Let's say that it mellowed me in a way. As Yoko Ono, I'm very mellowed to the point that, yes, it's all right that I am Mrs. Lennon, you know. And it's a nice new feeling that I'm sort of enjoying. So that independence thing is rapidly sort of disappearing. Yeah. And if John thought of it's all right, and that's why I slapped it on my album, that's fine. Thank you very much, John. You know, that's the feeling. Part of us, of course, John and I felt that we know it all, and it seems like we know about enlightenment and this and that. So there was that arrogant side of us, and this was like a big hammer from above saying, well, just remember you don't know it, you know. There's a lot more to learn. And, you know, I feel that now John is helping me through Sean.
Or start your own label, and if so, where is it going to be?
We'd never start our own label, it's too much trouble, you know.
Would invest heavily in some of the company that has the Beatles, or?
I don't know, that'll be all up to Mr. Epstein.
How long before your contract does terminate with Capitol?
I don't know. I don't even remember signing it.
A year. Johnny,
it lasts another year.
Jeff Warren, Quincy at Global Magazine.
Hi, Jeff.
I'd like to ask you all a personal question while you're here. Right a little while ago, how can you sleep at night with that hard?
Well, when you're asleep, you don't notice.
True.
How do you sleep with your arms and your legs still attached? Just the same.
We got used to it over the years, you know.
People have only had short hair since the World War, so they've been sleeping for all those thousands of years with long hair. How are you used to sleeping with it short? I don't know how you live. Maybe that's why we've been up every night for the last year. Yeah, maybe that's why we have parties. That's it. We can't sleep with this long hair.
When we arrived in London in 1968, our small party decided that the best way to become known, Prabhupada wanted us to make a splash. So the best way to become known would be reach the Beatles because they were luminaries of the time. So we agreed that we would make prasadam dishes, apple dishes, to bring to Apple Records every day and see if we could catch someone's attention. So we did that, and the prasad went from the lower floors to the upper floors, so that ultimately everyone tasted some of that prasad, and they became a little addicted to that. So finally, when we stopped sending prasad, we were notified, where is this Apple Hare Krishna group? So we came to meet them, and ultimately, I think, met George that day. And when George heard that we were into transcendental chanting and chanting Hare Krishna, he really wanted to hear us. And almost right away, we started having really good kirtans with him at his house, and said, I want to record this. And so the first thing we did was the Hare Krishna mantra on a 45. And I believe it was Sri Krishna on the backside. That became number 1 in Czechoslovakia, was top 10, topped the pops in England. And then that led to the larger album, the Govindam album. So Srila Prabhupada was, of course, very happy with the involvement that we were having with the Beatles. We ultimately lived at John Lennon's Tittenhurst estate for much of the fall of '69. And when Srila Prabhupada finally did arrive, he was so very pleased of this connection.
Geoffrey Giuliano is the author of some 30 internationally best-selling books on the Beatles, John Lennon, and other iconic musicians of the 1960s. In 2006, his book, Paint It Black, The Murder of Brian Jones, was made into a film by Stephen Woolley and Nick Powell entitled Stoned, The Wild and Wicked World of Brian Jones. It remains a cult classic and the only film bio of the Rolling Stones. Giuliano is also a veteran journalist, having written for dozens of high-profile newspapers and magazines, including The Sunday People, The Daily Mail, The News of the World, The Mail on Sunday, Playgirl, and Rolling Stone. A noted film actor, Giuliano starred in such movies as Vikingdom, Scorpion King 3, Jules Verne's The Mysterious Island, The Fifth Execution, Far Cry 3, Fire Desire, among many. In addition, he hosted the long-running North American syndicated radio series, Geoffrey Giuliano's Roots of Rock, for 5 years, as well as pioneering the audiobook industry in the 1990s by authoring, narrating, and producing over 250 original, non-book-based, interview-driven productions. Giuliano's publishers included Random House, HarperCollins, Delta Entertainment, Durkin Hayes, Playaway Audio, Speechworks, and B&B Audio, among dozens more internationally. In 1998, Random House acquired his firm Tribute Audio, for which Giuliano acted as CEO and publisher for 5 years. His best-selling audiobook, That Fateful Night, True Stories of Titanic Survivors in Their Own Words, was nominated for a Grammy. In 2014, Geoffrey Giuliano founded Icon Editions and G2 Media Arts to market his updated works as well as publish new projects. As a visual artist, Geoffrey has been showing in galleries across America since 1977, garnering impressive reviews. His first professional assignment was designing several T-shirts for The Who's Pete Townsend in 1976. Geoffrey also designed and illustrated many of his original rock biographies for the biggest publishers in the world from 1984 to 2006, as well as designing for his pioneering record label, Samba Records, in the mid-1990s. From 2006 to 2011, Geoffrey was also the primary designer for the French fashion house Cotai. When Giuliano first conceived of creating his own literary imprint, Icon Editions, he became responsible for illustrating and designing 35 book covers, several hundred CDs, DVDs, as well as dozens of promotional posters, and eventually an entire collection of exclusive fashion and art. The expansive Design by Giuliano brand grew out of Geoffrey's impressive commitment to the arts and is the culmination of a lifetime's work by an extraordinarily talented and determined Renaissance man.